It was a quiet Sunday morning. The kind of morning where the world feels still, no rush, no noise, just peace. I was in my pajamas, hair messy, sipping what was left of yesterday's coffee, when I heard it, that knock. It wasn't loud. It wasn't rushed. It was hesitant. Like whoever was on the other side wasn't sure if they should even be there. 3 gentle knocks, spaced apart, almost guilty. At first, I didn't think much of it. Maybe a delivery. Maybe a neighbor. But when I got closer to the door, I felt something. You ever get that feeling when your stomach drops for no reason? Like your body knows something your mind doesn't? That was me. Standing there, barefoot, half awake, one hand on the doorknob, and my heart just knew. Something was about to change. I opened the door, still in my pajamas, expecting a smile, a joke, anything normal. But instead, I saw his face, my son, and the look in his eyes made me forget how to breathe. He wasn't crying. He wasn't angry. He just looked broken. Like he'd seen something he shouldn't have. Something he couldn't unsee. For a second, we just stared at each other. No words. No sound. Just that heavy silence, the kind that fills a room when truth is too painful to say out loud. And then he said something so small, so simple, that shattered everything I thought I knew about my family. It was like time froze. Like all the air had been sucked out of the house. You know that kind of pain that doesn't make you cry at first, it just makes you still? Like your body's protecting you from what your heart can't handle yet. That was me. Standing there, in my pajamas. Realizing that the life I'd been living, the love I thought I had, the family I thought I built, wasn't what it seemed. And that knock, that quiet, hesitant knock, was the sound of everything starting to fall apart. They say some moments change you forever. For me, it started with that knock on a Sunday morning. And what followed, was the kind of truth that makes you wish you never asked questions. But I'll tell you everything. Because some stories aren't meant to stay hidden. Some truths need to be heard, even if they hurt. So take a deep breath. Because what you're about to hear might make you question everything you believe about love, loyalty, and trust. Subscribe to Stories by T, because the truth always finds its way out. My name is Laura, and for most of my adult life, I believed I had the kind of marriage people envied. Not the picture-perfect kind you see on social media, no. Ours was quieter. Simple. Predictable. And for a long time I thought predictable meant safe. I'm 38. I work from home as a freelance designer, nothing fancy, but it pays the bills. My husband, Michael, works in logistics. He's always been ambitious, always chasing the next contract, the next flight, the next deal. At first, I admired that about him, his drive, his focus. But somewhere along the way, that same focus stopped including me. When we were younger, he used to call just to say he missed my voice. Now, days go by and the only messages I get are, landed. Busy. Talk later. The thing about silence is that it doesn't come all at once. It starts small, a night apart here, a forgotten kiss there. Then one day, you wake up next to someone who feels like a polite stranger. We have a son, Ethan, 18. My gentle boy. He's the kind of child who apologizes even when it isn't his fault. Quiet, thoughtful, always observing. He's getting ready for college, though I still can't picture this house without him. He's the glue that keeps things from completely falling apart. Sometimes, at dinner, it's just the two of us. Michael's away again, another trip, another reason. Ethan eats quickly, tells me about a class project or a new song he likes, and then heads to his room. When his door closes, the house goes still. That kind of stillness that hums, not peaceful, but hollow. I try to fill it. With work. With laundry. With reruns I've already seen 100 times. But loneliness has a sound, and once you hear it, you can't unhear it. It's the sound of forks scraping empty plates, the sound of your own sighs echoing through a room that used to hold laughter. I used to think marriage ended in arguments, in slammed doors or broken dishes. But sometimes it ends quietly, in polite smiles and separate calendars. Michael and I used to talk about everything. Now, when he calls, it's about logistics, not love. What time's Ethan's appointment? Did you pay the light bill? Tell him I'll be home Friday. But Fridays come and go. And when he's finally home, it feels more like a guest visit than a reunion. He drops his suitcase by the door, kisses my cheek, the kind of kiss that misses your mouth on purpose, and disappears into the shower. I pretend not to notice the unfamiliar cologne. Or the way he checks his phone and smiles at messages he doesn't show me. You'd think after years of marriage, I'd be used to it. But I'm not. Because when you love someone, you keep hoping they'll come back, not just physically, but emotionally. And every time he doesn't, that hope dies a little more. Late at night, I lie awake listening to the clock tick. Sometimes I scroll through old photos, the vacations, the birthdays, the smiles that look genuine. I wonder when exactly he started pulling away. Was it after Ethan was born? Was it when his career took off? Or was it me? Did I stop being enough? I ask myself those questions more than I'd like to admit. And the worst part? I still love him. Even in the absence, even in the ache. It's like loving a ghost who still sleeps beside you. Looking back now, the signs were there. The missed anniversaries. The calls that went straight to voicemail. The sudden bursts of generosity, gifts that felt like guilt disguised as affection. At the time, I brushed it off. He's just tired, I told myself. He's working hard for us. But deep down, I knew something had shifted. His eyes didn't hold me anymore when we talked. His touch felt rehearsed, like he was following a script he no longer believed in. Ethan noticed too. He'd ask, "Is Dad coming home this weekend?" And I'd smile, pretending confidence I didn't have. "Of course, honey. He always comes home." But the truth? He was already gone, long before I realized it. Michael had become a stranger in our home. But I didn't know he had already built another life. That Sunday morning, I remember everything. The smell of coffee, the warmth of my robe, the way the sunlight touched the living room floor, everything felt normal. Peaceful. For once, I wasn't thinking about work, or Michael's next trip, or the thousand little things that kept me busy. I was just breathing. Then came the knock. 3 gentle knocks. The same sound that changed everything. I thought it was a delivery guy, so I shuffled toward the door, still in my pajamas, hair unbrushed. But when I opened it, it wasn't a stranger standing there. It was Ethan. He looked nervous. His eyes darted between me and the floor, like he was carrying something heavy, not just physically, but emotionally. He held a small brown parcel in his hands. "Mom," he said quietly, "this came in the mail." It was in the box outside. "But, it's not addressed to us." I frowned. "Not to us?" He shook his head and handed it to me. It had Michael's name written in bold letters, Michael Turner, our address right below it, but the sender's name, that's what made my stomach tighten. It simply said, Lydia. No last name. No company logo. Just Lydia. I tried to play it cool, even as a strange unease crept through me. Michael often got mail, contracts, samples, documents. But this package didn't feel like business. It was too small, too carefully wrapped. I tore it open slowly, pretending not to care, pretending my heart wasn't thumping hard enough to hear. Inside the box was a tiny velvet jewelry pouch. And inside that, a necklace. A thin gold chain with a delicate pendant. Beautiful. Elegant. Feminine. Not my style. Not anything he'd ever bought me. There was an engraving on the back of the pendant. 4 words, neat, intimate, and deliberate. Forever yours, L. For a moment, I just stared at it. My brain refused to catch up with my eyes. It was like reading something in a dream, unreal but painfully clear. My fingers went cold. The air felt heavier. Even the ticking clock on the wall seemed louder. Ethan shifted beside me. "Mom," he whispered, "I think Dad's hiding something." I looked up at him, at those worried eyes that looked too much like his father's, and I felt something inside me collapse. A quiet, invisible breaking. I wanted to protect him, to smile and say, "No, honey, you've got it wrong." But I couldn't. Because in that moment, the truth didn't even need words. It was sitting there, shining under the morning light, a promise meant for someone who wasn't me. I tried to speak, but all that came out was a whisper. "Where did you find this?" He swallowed hard. "It was in the mailbox. The delivery guy must have dropped it off early. I thought, maybe it was for you." But then I saw the name. I nodded slowly, pretending composure I didn't feel. "Thanks, sweetheart. I'll take care of it." He lingered a bit longer, like he wanted to say more. But he didn't. He just looked at me with those quiet, searching eyes and said, "Mom, please don't cry." Then he turned and walked toward his room, leaving me there, holding that necklace like it was evidence of a crime I didn't want to solve. The house felt suddenly colder. Every corner, every memory seemed to shift under this new truth. The coffee on the counter had gone cold. My hands were shaking. And yet, I couldn't let go of that necklace. I turned it over and over in my palm, as if a different angle might change the engraving. But no. The message was still there. Permanent. Personal. Forever yours, L. That necklace wasn't just jewelry. It was a confession. A secret carved in metal. A whisper from another woman saying, "I exist." And that was the moment I realized, the life I'd been clinging to, the trust I'd been defending, might already be gone. That necklace was more than jewelry. It was evidence. I sat there for a long time, just staring at that necklace. The gold caught the sunlight in little flashes, like it was mocking me. Something that beautiful shouldn't have hurt so much, but it did. My thoughts started to spiral, wild, uncontrollable. Every late-night phone call, every business trip that ran longer than expected, every weekend he said he needed to catch up on paperwork, they all started piecing themselves together like a cruel puzzle. And for the first time, I didn't like the picture I saw. I kept telling myself there had to be another explanation. Maybe it was a corporate gift. Maybe Elle was a client. Maybe it was for me, and he just hadn't had the chance to surprise me yet. But deep down, I knew. I knew the kind of woman my husband was, meticulous, careful, deliberate. He never did anything without purpose. And if this necklace were meant for me, he would have given it to me himself, with that charming little smile he used to have when we first fell in love. But those smiles were rare now. And when they came, they felt forced, like a man remembering his lines but forgetting his heart. I tried to shake it off, to breathe, to tell myself I was overreacting. But once suspicion enters your mind, it doesn't leave quietly. It lingers. It watches. It whispers. That whole day, I moved like I was in a fog. I folded laundry that didn't need folding. I made dinner I didn't want to eat. And through it all, that little velvet pouch sat on the counter, a silent witness, waiting for me to break. When Michael called that evening, his voice sounded normal. Too normal. "Hey, love," he said, "just landed. How's everything at home?" And for a moment, I almost told him. I almost said, "Everything's fine, except there's a necklace here that says someone else loves you." But the words froze in my throat. Instead, I asked, "How was your trip?" He hesitated, just slightly, and said, "Long. I'm exhausted. Can't wait to be home." And something about that pause, it didn't sound like exhaustion. It sounded like guilt. I hung up, and my heart ached. Not from anger, not yet, but from this deep, quiet grief. Because even though he said he couldn't wait to come home, I realized I no longer knew what home meant to him. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake beside an empty space where he should have been, listening to the clock tick away the hours. My mind wouldn't stop replaying every moment that suddenly felt suspicious, the perfume I once brushed off as a coworker's hug. The faint lipstick stain I convinced myself was mine. The strange cologne, stronger, newer, the one he started wearing a few months ago. And the way his phone never left his hand anymore. I told myself I was imagining things. That all couples go through distant phases. That work stress made him different, not disloyal. But when your heart knows, denial becomes a temporary form of self-preservation. I told myself maybe it was for me, even though it never was. I opened his wardrobe the next morning, pretending to be looking for something, and I found what I wasn't looking for. A receipt tucked into the pocket of his jeans. It wasn't from a business restaurant or a hotel. It was from a boutique, a jewelry store. The same brand printed faintly on the velvet pouch sitting on my counter. That's when the numbness started to fade, and in its place came a burning feeling, confusion mixed with humiliation. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw that necklace in his face. But then I remembered Ethan. I couldn't let him see me like that, not broken, not bitter. So instead, I smiled through breakfast the next day, asking about school while my mind replayed lies like a movie I couldn't turn off. And in between the clinking of spoons and the hum of the refrigerator, I made a quiet decision. I wasn't going to accuse him, not yet. I was going to watch. Listen. Wait. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that the truth always reveals itself. Sometimes you just have to stand still long enough to see it happen. That necklace wasn't just evidence of a secret. It was the beginning of an awakening, one that would show me not only who my husband really was, but who I'd become trying to love him. Suspicion has a way of turning ordinary moments into investigations. What used to be a casual glance at his phone became a silent mission. What used to be love became observation. By the third day, I had memorized his routine, when he left, when he called, when he smiled for no reason at all. And every time his phone buzzed, I felt that familiar sting in my chest. That what if? He'd started locking his phone more often. He said it was for work security. But the more he hid, the more I searched. One morning, after he left for a client meeting, I sat on the edge of our bed, staring at his phone charger. He'd taken his phone, of course. But he forgot his laptop. And when curiosity and pain join hands, they make you brave and reckless. I opened the laptop. Password protected. Of course. But then I remembered, Michael wasn't creative with passwords. He always used our anniversary date. I typed it in. Access granted. And just like that, I stepped into a version of my husband I didn't recognize. At first, it was small things, work emails, flight bookings. But then I saw a folder tucked deep inside a hidden drive. It was named invoices. Except the invoices were not numbers. They were pictures. Photos. My husband, smiling, in a hotel lounge. Laughing with a woman I'd never seen before. Her hair was dark, shoulder length. Her smile, confident. Familiar, in a way that made my stomach twist. And next to one photo, a note read, "Weekend well spent." L. The same L from the necklace. I clicked through the images slowly, afraid of what each one would show. Different settings, restaurants, hotel lobbies, parks. Always the same woman. Always the same expression on his face, free, relaxed, happy. There was even one of them at a carnival. She had her arms around him, her head resting on his shoulder. He was wearing the same shirt he'd worn home that night, the one I'd washed for him, without knowing whose perfume I was rinsing away. And then, there was the final picture. Not of them. Of her daughter. A teenage girl, about Ethan's age. Her smile was bright, innocent. And the caption underneath made my blood run cold, "Lydia and Lily, my girls." Lydia. The name hit me like a punch. So L wasn't just an initial. It was a name. A woman. A life he was building, parallel to ours. My breathing turned shallow. My vision blurred with tears. He didn't just betray me, he built an entire world without me. I searched his messages next. Most of them were deleted. But he wasn't as careful as he thought. One contact stood out, Mason Electric. I clicked it open. It wasn't a business contact. It was her. Good morning, my love, I miss your scent. Don't forget our weekend plans. Every line shattered something inside me. The timestamps matched his business trips. The hotels, the same ones on his expense receipts. And in between it all, there was one message that made my stomach turn: Ethan is such a sweet boy. He reminds me of Lily. She knew my son's name. She'd seen pictures of him. Maybe even met him. I slammed the laptop shut, my hands trembling so hard I could barely breathe. I felt disgusted, but also, strangely curious. Who was this woman who'd stolen my husband's affection so completely? What did she have that I didn't? That's the cruel part of betrayal, you start blaming yourself before you even confront the person who wronged you. I stumbled to the bathroom, splashing cold water on my face, trying to quiet the shaking in my body. But when I looked in the mirror, I didn't see me anymore. I saw someone tired, broken, haunted by love's decay. And that's when I heard the soft knock on my door. Mom? Ethan stood there, his eyes red, his voice small. Are you okay? I tried to smile. Of course. Why wouldn't I be? But my voice cracked halfway through. He just looked at me, like he'd been waiting for this moment. He stepped closer. Mom. I know. My heart stopped. What do you mean? He hesitated, then sat beside me on the bed. I've known for weeks. The silence that followed was unbearable. He wasn't angry. He wasn't surprised. He was resigned. Like a boy who'd grown up too fast. How long? I whispered. He looked down. Since that weekend Dad said he was on a work trip. I saw pictures, on social media. I didn't want to believe it. I could barely breathe. My son, my sweet boy, had been carrying this secret alone. Tears streamed down my face before I could stop them. I reached for him, but he shook his head. There's something else, Mom, he said quietly. Something you don't know. I froze. What do you mean? He swallowed hard, eyes glistening. About Dad, and Lydia. I thought the betrayal had already cut deep. But what Ethan was about to tell me would change everything. Ethan's voice trembled as he spoke, his words heavy with something I wasn't ready to hear. He looked older in that moment, not 18, not my boy, but someone who'd carried too much truth for too long. Mom, he whispered, I overheard them. My body went still. Overheard who? Dad. And that woman. Lydia. The name burned through the room again, poisonous and alive. He continued, his voice breaking, it was weeks ago. Dad didn't know I was home early from practice. I was upstairs, and I heard him on the phone. He thought he was alone. The air between us grew thick. What did you hear, Ethan? He looked away, unable to meet my eyes. He said, he couldn't keep living a double life. He said once I leave for college, he's leaving too. That he and Lydia already have plans. That they're going to start over somewhere else. I felt the floor tilt beneath me. Start over? Leave? I pressed my hand to my chest, trying to stop the ache that spread through my ribs like wildfire. He said, Ethan paused, he said you'd be fine. That you'd understand. Understand? A hollow laugh escaped my throat, the kind that sounds more like a cry. So that was the plan. Wait until our son was gone, and then vanish. Like our life together was a lease he was just waiting to end. I stood up. My legs trembled, but my anger was steadier than my balance. Where is he now? I asked. Ethan hesitated. He said he'd be back tonight. But Mom, please don't do anything crazy. But it was already too late. I wasn't thinking. I wasn't breathing. I was moving. I grabbed my car keys with shaking hands, still in my pajamas, hair messy, slippers barely on. It was raining, light but cold, and I didn't care. I drove like someone running from their own skin. The road blurred. The city felt foreign. And all I could hear in my head were his words, "He's leaving you." I didn't even realize where I was going until I saw the sign, Harborview Hotel. The same name from his receipts. The same place from the photos. The parking lot was half empty, but I recognized his car instantly. Silver. Clean. The same faint dent on the side door. It sat there like evidence waiting to be confessed. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. I could have sat there for hours, but anger doesn't wait. It burns and it drives. I walked inside, drenched, shaking, barefoot. The lobby lights felt too bright, the air too clean, too calm for what I was carrying. And then I saw him. Michael. My husband. Standing by the cafe, laughing. Laughing, with her. Lydia. The woman from the photos. She looked exactly how I'd imagined her, put together, elegant, younger by maybe 5 years. She touched his arm like she'd done it 1,000 times. He smiled like it was second nature. Something inside me snapped. I didn't care about the stares, the murmurs from the staff, the couple at the counter turning to look. I walked straight toward them. He saw me halfway there, the color drained from his face. "Laura," he whispered, like I was a ghost. I stopped in front of them, my voice trembling but loud enough for everyone to hear. "How long have you been betraying us, Michael?" The room went silent. Lydia froze. Michael's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Tears burned my eyes, but my voice didn't falter. Was it easy? Building a new life while destroying mine? Did you practice your lies before you came home to me? Lydia stepped back, clutching her purse like it was a shield. I should go," she stammered. And before Michael could stop her, she turned and hurried toward the exit, her heels clicking like gunshots on marble. He reached for me, but I stepped away. Don't touch me. Laura, please. No, you listen. I snapped. Ethan heard you. Our son. He knows everything. The phone calls. The plans. You were going to walk out on us like we were disposable. People were watching now. A family at the front desk, a man in a suit pretending not to eavesdrop. But I didn't care. The truth deserved to be heard, even if it broke me in front of strangers. Michael ran a hand through his hair, his voice cracking. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Oh, I'm sure it wasn't, I said bitterly. Was she supposed to replace me quietly? Were you going to send me a postcard from your new life with her? He looked helpless. I didn't mean to hurt you. I laughed, a sound sharp enough to cut through the air. You didn't mean to? You just did. Over and over. Every night you came home to me, pretending to love me while you were already gone. My voice broke then. Not from anger, but from something deeper, the loss of everything I thought was real. He stepped closer, but I couldn't bear to look at him. I gave you everything, I whispered. My time. My heart. My forgiveness. And you still chose someone else. There was a pause, long enough for the sound of rain outside to fill the silence. And then I said the words that ended us, "You can have her, Michael." You already do. I turned away before he could answer. The floor felt unsteady beneath my feet, the weight of humiliation heavy on my shoulders. As I reached the door, I caught a glimpse of our reflection in the glass, him standing there, defeated, and me walking away. It looked like a movie scene. Only, this time, I wasn't the actress pretending to be fine. That day, I lost my husband, my illusion, and my calm, all before noon. But sometimes, losing everything is the only way to find yourself again. I don't remember the drive home. It was all a blur, red lights, wipers scraping against glass, the faint taste of salt on my lips from tears I didn't even know I was crying. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the world felt hollow. Like every sound had been sucked out of it. The house looked the same, the porch light still flickering, the curtains still drawn, but something in me knew, nothing inside those walls would ever feel the same again. I pushed open the door, still in those same soaked pajamas. The smell of coffee lingered from the morning, but it felt foreign, like it belonged to someone else's life. Ethan was waiting on the couch. The moment he saw me, he stood, his face pale, eyes red. "Mom?" I tried to answer, but my voice didn't come. It was like my throat had locked shut. He walked closer, and before I could stop myself, I broke. The tears came fast, loud, raw, unstoppable. And my son, my 18-year-old boy, pulled me into his arms and held me the way I used to hold him when he was little. His voice cracked, but it was steady enough to whisper, "It's okay, Mom. It's okay. I'm here." And for the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't felt in my own home, safety. Not from a husband, but from my child. The roles had reversed, and it tore at my heart in the most human way. When I finally pulled away, he wiped his eyes quickly, pretending to be strong for me. I managed to whisper, "He's gone." Ethan just nodded. He didn't need the details. He already knew. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak in the house sounded like a ghost. Every shadow felt like a memory. I kept expecting to hear his footsteps in the hallway, the sound of his keys on the counter, but the silence was louder than any of that. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of drawers opening. Michael was home, briefly. He didn't say a word when I found him in the bedroom, pulling clothes from the closet. He looked exhausted. Like a man who'd lost his fight but didn't have the decency to admit it. We didn't argue. We didn't cry. We just existed, in the same room, two strangers surrounded by the ruins of what used to be love. He zipped up his bag. I noticed how empty the closet looked once he was done, his side of the bed, his cologne, even his toothbrush, gone. Just like that. When he walked past me, he hesitated at the door. "Tell Ethan I'm sorry," he said softly. And then he left. No goodbye. No explanation. Just the sound of the door closing behind him, final, like a nail sealing a coffin. For days, I moved like a ghost. I cooked breakfast I couldn't eat. Folded laundry that wasn't needed anymore. Pretended to answer calls that never came. Every time the phone rang, my hands trembled, part of me hoping it was him, another part terrified it would be. But it was never him. Just silence, static, or the wrong number. Then came the whispers. Neighbors suddenly became curious. The woman across the street, who'd never spoken to me before, suddenly had a reason to ask, "Are you doing all right, Laura?" And I could see it in her eyes, she already knew. They all did. Small-town kindness wrapped around sharp tongues. Rumors spread faster than healing ever could. At the grocery store, people looked away too slowly. At the gym, someone murmured, "Poor thing, he left her for that younger woman." And every whisper was another crack in what little strength I had left. Ethan tried to distract me, took over chores, made dinner, even turned down his music so the house wouldn't feel so loud. But every time I passed Michael's old study, the half-empty bookshelves stared back at me like open wounds. That space, our home, once filled with laughter and love, now felt like a museum of heartbreak. I couldn't walk into the bedroom without smelling his cologne that still lingered in the sheets. I couldn't open the fridge without seeing the jar of his favorite jam still sitting on the top shelf. Everything he left behind became evidence, not of his presence, but of his absence. And that's the cruel thing about betrayal. It doesn't just take the person away. It takes the life you thought you had. Days passed. The silence stayed. And every morning when I looked at the mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked tired. Empty. But maybe, just maybe, she was beginning to see herself again, beneath all the pain. Michael moved out, but the silence stayed behind. It filled the rooms, the walls, the spaces between each heartbeat. And in that silence, I began to wonder, was I mourning the man I lost, or the woman I used to be before him? Nights grew longer after he left. Silence wasn't just quiet anymore, it was alive, whispering thoughts I'd avoided for years. Everywhere I turned, memories waited, in photo frames, in folded clothes, in the way sunlight hit the living room couch at noon. And somewhere between those moments, a thought began to form, was I blind? Or just afraid to see? I used to believe love was about patience. That if you held on long enough, if you loved deeply enough, things would somehow fix themselves. But maybe love isn't meant to survive on patience alone. Maybe it needs honesty. And courage. Two things we'd lost long before Lydia ever entered the picture. If I'm honest, my marriage had been dying quietly for years, long before the affair, long before the lies. We stopped laughing together. Stopped listening. We became partners in routine, not in love. And I, like a fool desperate for comfort, mistook stability for happiness. There were signs. Of course there were signs. The distance. The coldness. The way he looked through me instead of at me. But I convinced myself it was just stress, or work, or life. I told myself he'd come back to me, that the man I married still existed somewhere behind the tired eyes and the fake smiles. But he didn't. He was already gone. And the cruelest part? I saw it. I felt it. But I didn't have the strength to admit it. Because admitting it meant facing the truth, that maybe I wasn't enough. That maybe, no matter how much I gave, it would never fill the space he'd already given to someone else. Pauses, voice softer, but with time, I realized something I never expected. It wasn't about her. It was never about Lydia. It was about the cracks we both ignored. The unspoken words. The nights we slept back to back, pretending we were fine. We built a house together, but somewhere along the way, we forgot how to build us. And now I'm learning how to forgive, not him, but myself. For staying too long. For silencing my instincts. For mistaking comfort for love. For giving pieces of myself to someone who never knew what to do with them. Forgiveness isn't easy. It's messy, painful, and slow. Some mornings I wake up angry all over again. Other days, I feel nothing at all. But somewhere between the anger and the emptiness, I'm finding small fragments of peace. Ethan has become my mirror. He sees me, really sees me, in ways his father never did. The other night, as we sat on the porch in silence, he said, "You don't have to be strong all the time, Mom." And I realized then, he'd been watching me all along. He saw my sadness, my loneliness, my quiet attempts to keep the family together while it was falling apart. He carried that pain with him, even when I thought I was hiding it. My son saw my heart breaking before I did. So now, I'm trying to rebuild, not a marriage, not a perfect life, but myself. I've started reading again. Taking walks. Learning how to enjoy my own company without needing someone to validate my worth. Some days I still feel fragile. But that's okay. Fragile things can still be beautiful. I've learned that sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the ones who swore to protect us. And maybe that's life's cruel way of teaching us strength, to remind us that love isn't always safe, but we survive it anyway. Pain changes you, but it doesn't have to define you. I'm not the woman who waited by the door anymore. I'm the woman who finally opened it, and walked through. Sometimes, healing isn't about finding answers. It's about asking yourself the right questions, the kind that burn quietly in your chest long after the pain has passed. Laura's story isn't just about betrayal. It's about rediscovering strength after losing everything you thought defined you. It's about learning that love doesn't always end with closure, sometimes it ends with courage. Now, I want you to think for a moment. If you were in Laura's place, standing in the ruins of a marriage built on years of promises and trust, would you have forgiven Michael, or would you have walked away? Would you have tried to rebuild what was broken, knowing it would never be the same? Or would you have chosen yourself, even if it meant walking into the unknown? Because sometimes, love demands sacrifice, and other times, it demands self-respect. And in the quiet moments after the storm, we all face that impossible question: which one would you choose? Betrayal comes in many forms, from lovers, from friends, sometimes even from ourselves. So tell me, what's the hardest betrayal you've ever had to recover from? Was it a broken vow? A love that faded without warning? Or the realization that someone you trusted was only pretending to care? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might just help someone else heal from theirs. Because here on Stories by T, every emotion, every secret, every heartbreak, has a voice. And sometimes, just sharing what broke you is the first step toward mending. Before you go, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Stories by T, where real emotions, tough choices, and unforgettable human stories come to life every week. Join our growing family of listeners who believe that even in our darkest moments, stories remind us we're never truly alone. This was Laura's story, but it could be any of ours. Until next time, take care of your heart.